All right, and welcome to Video Guys News Day Tuesday. Today's show's all about Avid, Media Composer, and the reinstatement plan. But I don't want to say it's a reinstatement plan. I want to say come back to Avid. We have lots of different ways to do it. We know there were a lot of Avid editors who left Avid for whatever reason. Some of them jumped to Premiere, some went to Final Cut. We found there's a lot of them found out, those programs are good and they work, but they're not Avid. I just wish Avid would do this or had that. Well, Avid has spent the last 2 years listening to people. They did focus groups in Hollywood. They did focus groups with editors of every level. They talked to new editors. They talked to Pro Tools users saying, you're a musician, you want to make a music video, what would you like to use? They talked to people who are doing event videography. They talked to people who are doing social media video. They talked to people at every level to learn about what people wanted. And we brought in Mike, who was part of some of those discussions. So Mike, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing fantastic. Thanks for coming on in here. And I think what we want you to basically do is introduce yourself, what your role is at Avid, and then if you could, let's segue into what that Media Composer 2019 R&D research, how we got there. We did a show with Kate and she did a great job, but I'd like to hear your perspective because you were far more in contact with the users during that phase.
Oh yeah, I think it's a whole process. To your point, this wasn't something that Avid just said, hey, you're going to work like this. It was years of development with the beta team, with editors, with people who've never seen Media Composer before. We had to basically balance how the current editor works, but also be able to bring in the new editor. And a funny little story there. One of the product designers basically was told by the seasoned Media Composer editor to you've got to make something different. You have to modernize it. You have to make it more usable for new people, but don't change anything. So basically, the whole idea of change it but don't change it is something that we've been battling for years. But honestly, this release has been pretty phenomenal. The response has been great. It's going to take time for some people, but honestly, after going and using it for a while, I go back to the old UI and I'm still a little, it looks a little old. So it's kind of nice to see something refreshed.
I think one of the most important things, and when you really dug down into that funny comment about what the seasoned editor was saying, you saying you could change the way it looks and make it modern, but all my muscle memory has to be retained. And exactly. I think that's really what you guys held true to, and that's the muscle memory is one of those factors that I think sets apart an Avid editor from different types of editors. And just like if you're a golfer, you got to get that swing and practice. You can do it the same way. That's what happens to guys who edit hundreds and thousands of hours of footages. You just start knowing what you need to do and getting it there. And they were like, I want this other cool stuff. I want to be able to do this cool stuff that these other guys can do. But by the way, JKL better work like it always did and everything else that I'm used to getting at. And you even brought back some stuff like the weightlifter and some other stuff that people said, why'd you take it out? So just a great job overall. I want to run down the highlights of 2019. And once again, we did a complete show with Kate where we went to this in depth, and that's not what today's show is going to be. It was a redesigned UI and user experience. It was role-based customizations. It was finish and deliver, where you were capable now for all these different OTT formats, and you could take just about anything in to anything out. And you put a whole new next generation engine on that can even be expanded to, distributed processing. Now that's enterprise level stuff, so I don't want to get into that. Why you're on the show, Mike, is I want to dig into this, the good part, the stuff that really changed what's new. So the first thing that really changed was now I could be paneled or floating panels. Talk about why that was so important to so many editors.
Well, it's a matter of cleaning up. People are working on laptops. They're working on multi-displays. We have people who are going out to 3 displays or using the wide curved monitors. So it's all about how you lay out your bins and your actual workspace. So the idea here is, editors told us when they have bins and windows in front of one another, they have to keep moving things out of the way. So what we've done is we've created a paneled UI where your bin and your timeline and your source record, your composer window are locked. So you can go ahead and move your panels and you're not having windows on top of one another. But what I have in this image here is you can float windows. So if you do like bins and tools on top of one another, or you don't mind that, we don't want to limit the way that you work. So you can float, you can panel, or you can even tab in your panels to have multiple tools and windows available. So a whole new reimagined UI, which actually is really great.
And you know, before we get into the inspector tool, one of the things I want to go back to this interface, because one of the things that used to kind of drive me crazy about Avid was everything always fell on top of everything. And what I really like about the new way you're doing the panels is that they actually can, things tab back to where they were. So you can open a tab and something opens up on the side, you get to what you need, and when you're done with it, it slides back to right where it was. It's still like a touch away, where I used to find when I was digging into Avid, I'd get into something like, maybe I was keyframing a 3D effect or something. Once I closed that panel, to get back to it was that same amount of steps to get back where it was buried. And now it kind of stays where you need it.
Well, yeah, and the nice thing is you have on the far right side the task-oriented workspaces. So if you set up a look that you like, there's a window, much like some other NLEs out there, so you can go and see, okay, I want to go into color space, or I want to go into, my color correction,
Yep.
or my workspace. So this is more mainly for an editor who's never seen Media Composer before and is like, well, how do I get into color? Well, you just click on the workspace on the right. The workspace can be customized. You can create your own looks and save them along the lower portion down the right side as well. And then for real estate reasons, you can get rid of that sidebar and have everything mapped to a key. Again, you mentioned about muscle memory. Mapping stuff to keys is a vital part of working with Media Composer. Mapping, just having that control, and just again that muscle memory that is still there.
Cool. Now I want to talk about the inspector tool. A lot of people had some complaints about it. A lot of people wanted to see changes. Talk to me about what's in it and why it's so much better, and why people who maybe gave one away from Avid will like to see it back.
But yeah, the inspector tool is just a nice preview of your metadata. So if you are working in a bin, and your bin, you have columns, so you can have loads of columns in there that you're swiping back and forth through the interface to take a look at your metadata. Well, in the lower left-hand corner, and I docked this, you can panelize this, is the inspector tool. And the inspector tool is contextual in the sense that if I select a clip in the bin, it brings up the metadata for that clip. If I go into the source or record windows and click on those, it'll change and show metadata for what I've selected. So the nice thing is I could be in frame mode and I still have access to all of my metadata, plus you can customize. So if you're on a sequence and you want to change the start of that sequence time code, you can literally click on the sequence, go to the inspector tool, and you can go in and change time code. You can change mark points. You can change names. Have a more readily available information that you want to see with the inspector tool. So again, a nice new tool that's available.
Cool. And now let's also go into, you kind of handled it with the inspector tool. I can do sequences. So I actually should have brought this slide up. Let's bring this slide up full screen again, and I'll just kind of review what Mike said, and that is I can inspect individual clips, or I can actually inspect my sequence, which is a nice change because now I can see the metadata for either one or essentially both right after each other with just a quick little click, a couple of clicks. So that's very cool. The next thing we want to get into is bin container and bin map. Now this is an area where Avid was always the leader with bins, but the bins kind of got old and stodgy, and I think a lot of NLEs kind of leapfrogged you, and now you're kind of coming back to the top because you're allowing people to have, they can look at it in the old-fashioned data they want, or it could be more visual with video clips, it could be color-coded. Talk about all the changes that went in over there.
Yeah, what I have here is basically, I took the bin container, and the idea of the bin container is it contains your bins. Now there is a sidebar that you could bring up on the left side, but I want to show this as, let's say, your bin monitor. So you could have in one window all of your layouts split. Again, this is all panelized, where you can go in and have inside of your panels, it could be a script. It could be your frame mode of one bin. It could be text mode of another bin. It could be script mode of another bin. You could have multiple bin containers, so bin containers of music and sound effects, or bin containers of just your scripts. So again, a nice clean way of viewing your bins in a single window. And again, you can float any of these if you want. But also one thing that we added in this latest release of 2019.9 is the tabs, which are on top of the bins. When you color code your clips, that color is shown in the tab as well. So if you have one window with several tabbed bins, you can at least have an identifier as to which bin goes with what color tab.
Now, Mike, I want to interrupt you. Can we bring that up full screen again? Because Mike was a little tricky here and sneaky, but I caught on to it. We got a little script sync action going on the bottom of this panel, don't we?
Aha, you caught that. So yeah, when you're opening up a script, the script is panelized, so you can actually drop that in. Script sync and phrase find have been back with Media Composer since version, I believe, 8.8. So it's included in the Ultimate. It is an option with standard Media Composer. But yep, we still have the script-based editing, and script sync is an option.
Cool. And then, you go.
Just wanted to go back before. There was, if you look in the frame mode of that shot, the bin map is a overall view of your bin. So all of those frames, the bin is actually larger than your actual window. And the bin map is a way that you can see your entire bin, and like a Google map or like a video game, you can actually move the little window around, that little white outline, to choose where in the bin you want to see those clips. So another nice view inside of the bin.
Yeah, very cool on that. And let's talk about the bin container a little bit more. I think you just went into that, but here's that other picture. Let's bring that up full screen, and Mike can talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, what I wanted to show here is, I did all of these screenshots on my laptop, and that full screen bin container, I was able to take and drag and panelize into the single view, and what you'll see is that layout that I had created is now compressed into that panel, and it's maintained. So you can still go in and customize the views in the panel, whether it's full screen or smaller screen with the bin container, and move stuff around. So again, the design and the way this visually is cleaner and well represented is really fantastic.
And I think I like to use the term virtual because I have a certain amount of screen real estate when I'm an editor. Maybe I'm on my laptop, as you mentioned. Maybe I have 2 or 3 screens. Maybe I have a large widescreen. But now the Avid interface goes beyond what's on your screen real estate. It's still really there, and you can get to all this other stuff. So we all knew you could go back and forth on your timeline, but I love how you can find something within a bin or pull up another panel that's there. The workspace is really almost infinite. You're just seeing the piece of it that's being shown on the screen that's in front of you at the time.
Exactly.
Okay, let's jump a little bit to one of the things that's in the GUI that's kind of cool, the auto color and the timeline text. And I know that's something that people are used to. CPX and some other products have gotten a little too used to over the years, but it's nice that you guys now have that feature too, because I'm one of those guys who color codes everything to organize it.
Yeah, besides in 2019.9, the latest release, being able to go into a color picker now to change your colors. So before we had a limited set of colors. Now you can go into the color picker and choose in the wheel your range or the crayons, or the spectrum. But one thing I wanted to point out here is because people are adding color to their clips, when you show that in your timeline, the text was either white or you could choose black. And in the center here is the timeline settings. So white or black text, but what happens is if you have black text and you have a dark clip, you can't read what the title of that clip is. So the third option that we just added is white or black text in the timeline. And it'll automatically sense the contrast of the clip and will decide on if it should use the white or black text in the timeline. So again, it's little things that are added into the UI that just make Media Composer better.
As a 56-year-old guy who edits video, who has to wear glasses now, I can't thank you enough for that, because I know back in the day 20 years ago, these small little screens with odd colored print on print didn't matter, but now it really does. And I think if you're going to be video editing a lot and you're going to spend a lot of time looking at that screen, things that can make that screen a little less strenuous on the old eyeballs, that's a good feature, and that just helps. It helps you do your job, and it helps you, not get headaches, and it increases your stamina when you're doing your editing, and you don't get as tired. So that's one of those little things that I think a lot of people say, oh, what's the big deal on that? Well, someday you'll be my age, and you'll appreciate it a lot more, trust me.
Well, believe me, I've spent many years on computers. I'm right there with you.
All right, now let's get to the meat of why we had you on the show, and I'm going to pick this up a little bit, and that was a lot of people. Avid switched to a program when you own Media Composer, they call it perpetual. you need to pay an annual support contract every year. Now that support contract gets you a cool thing. It gets you not only the ability to get online support, but it gets you free upgrades. Whatever Avid introduces, you get access to free. You don't have to download it, you don't have to install it, and we always recommend never installing something new in the middle of a project unless it's got a bug fix that specifically you were looking for. But what we do always recommend is, hey, get this done. You can have the latest version. I think it's important to always be on the latest version, but there's another side of being on the latest version that I think is something that I want to explain to people, and I'm going to cut to this camera and explain, and that is a lot of people get frustrated with the subscription model, with an annual payment model, because they say, you know, I used to just have the software, I use it for 4 or 5 years. Well, one of the things I got to stress to you that's changed is companies were losing their shirts supporting you, working with that old software, and then trying to get a new computer and not having it work on the latest operating system and other things like that. So one of the things that this model forces everyone to do is it forces you to stay on more current hardware to take advantage of the product, but it also forces Avid or Adobe, whoever's doing that subscription, to make sure they always work on the latest hardware promptly. Not like, oh, well, at NAB we're going to be releasing this, and then it gets delayed, and then it's June, and you've got a new computer you got for Christmas that you can't use for Avid editing because of some conflict. They can fix it, they can release it in line, and I have found that all the software vendors in this space who have gone to this model have had a lot less compatibility issues with new hardware, software, graphics cards, things like that. So it's an added bonus to this I think people take for granted, but it makes it worthwhile. So here's the deal. Let's say I'm an Avid editor, I used to have version 8, I stopped upgrading for whatever reason, I gave Premiere a try, I gave Final Cut a try, maybe I stopped editing for a while, whatever it was. Now you can reinstate. The reinstatement is $5.99. You don't have to buy a brand new seat, get you right back on Media Composer where you were. Your perpetual license stays yours and you own it, and you get all the upgrades for the next year. Now, after a year, you will be asked to do the annual support. The annual support is going to cost you $3.99 a year, and that support package will allow you to get that year's worth of updates. So that's all that is, and that's what you get for that. But there's other ways. Let's say you say, you know, I don't need a perpetual license, Gary. I understand the subscription thing. I understand what you're telling me. Well, they've got a great deal that they're calling the cross-grade to the subscription. So now what you can do is you can subscribe to Ultimate. Now, what's so great about Ultimate is Ultimate gives you the Avid third-party, well, the Avid own plugins to Media Composer. So you're going to get Phrase Find. You're going to get Phrase Find. You're going to get Phrase Find. You're going to get Script Sync. You're going to get the Symphony color correction in the Ultimate subscription. So it's really a great way to go. And I'm a big fan of the Ultimate subscription. And they're giving you a deal that it's normally, the cross grade was $3.99. They're going to give it to you for $2.99. They're going to let you do that for 2 years. And then the Ultimate subscription itself is normally $4.99. So it gives you a little head start. Yeah, I noticed I just got to crouch down a little bit. So I wanted to put this chart up. If we could put this chart up full speed for a second. And this chart kind of explains the buy versus lease math behind buying or leasing Media Composer. So let's get that. Okay, so what I've shown here is if you're going to do the perpetual reinstatements that you own Media Composer, it's going to cost you $5.99 and then $3.99 a year. That's that top blue line on the graph. The orange line is if you go with the Ultimate subscription upgrade, you're going to subscribe to it for $2.99. It's going to be $2.99 the next year, then it's going to go up by $4.99 per year. So yeah, you're going to, either way, you end up spending a little bit over $2,000. I think it's worth getting 5 years of the Ultimate tool set versus having the perpetual. Or one of the things I want to stress is you could just get regular Media Composer, the standard version, for $229. Now, what's so cool about the $229 version? Not everyone needs Phrase Find and Script Sync. Not everyone needs to be able to work with other people and collaborate. If you're an independent editor, Avid Media Composer for $229 is a fantastic deal. I think it's the best deal out there. If you think about it, if you edit 10 shows, 10 programs, 10 videos a year, you're spending 20 to 25 bucks a video for the best tool set in the world. The only difference between the Ultimate and the standard one, besides those other extras Avid softwares, is whether you can collaborate in a NEXIS environment or not. So if you're an independent editor working on your own, all you need is the $229 version. Great deal. If someday you get to the point where you get green lighted and you're putting on a production company, you're adding 3, 4, 5 people, upgrade to the Ultimate at that point when you buy your NEXIS Pro from us. So you get some shared storage. But I try to do that buy versus lease. Mike, do you have anything to add to that, or did I do a good job? What do you think?
No, that was great. I mean, just to summarize, I mean, it's not just a UI. I know I talked a lot about the UI and how the system works, but I think on your slide you had mention of, it's finishing. If you're trying to move and have deliverables for companies like, Netflix or other people that need it, there are tools and 32-bit float and ACES color workflows that are built into the software now that are vital for what people are doing now. So between that, if you haven't seen Phrase Find and Script Sync, they're amazing options. And one other thing, if I can just add, which is really big with this latest release, is if you downloaded the 2019.6 version, people were a little, I guess, put off with the fact that there was no real project window. But I'm happy to tell you that 2019.9, we brought the project window or the project sidebar back. So again, we've been listening. We listened to how people use the software, and that just adding that in has really made a lot of people happy. So project window is back. Great tools, great finishing, great UI. It's definitely the time to update your software.
And I want to talk about, you mentioned Netflix. Now, I think anyone now who's an aspiring filmmaker thinks, well, if I can't get my movie on the Hollywood big screen, maybe I could get my show on Netflix or another OTT. And I think one of the things that's real important that you touched upon that a lot of people glaze over, but back in the day when HD first came about, you'd shoot a documentary that had the greatest footage in the world. You want to give it to the Discovery Channel, and they had this specific range that you had to meet their exact spec, and if you didn't, they rejected your film, your video, whatever you did. And Netflix has their own requirements as well. And I think now that Avid's building those presets workflows, so if I know my goal is to produce a show for Netflix, I can have my project be set up for those Netflix or Hulu, whoever it is. And that's a really big thing that's going to save people a lot of time and a lot of effort. It also means you could do your project for Netflix, and then if you get to someone else, you could quickly open it up with the new project settings for the other OTT or wherever it was. You could see how it affected, and maybe there's a particular shot that you don't like the way it's cropped or looking down the color space. You can fix that up. I think that's a tool set that's wonderful, but it's also open-ended on the other side. There's new cameras coming out every day. I mean, we just had 6K didn't even exist 6 months ago, and now all of a sudden all we're talking about is 6K, 6K, 6K. And I just think it's important that the new Avid engine, with it being, what'd you say, 32-bit floating point or whatever, I mean, it can handle any format that's out there. And even if it doesn't exist as a preset today, you can bet if people ask for it, and it's being used by professional pros for video delivery, for television, for network sports, for Netflix, for Hollywood studios, you're going to see it be integrated in Avid as presets in the future, which means your workflow is going to become easier because you're not going to have to be guessing. It's just going to work.
Absolutely. We need to future-proof. We need to build for the future. And we're here to listen and make Media Composer bigger and better than ever with every version.
Cool. Mike, I want to thank you. I think this was a great show. I think we did a lot. I want to remind people that there's a lot of different other parts of Avid. There's floating licenses, there's dongles, there's educational versions. We can help you with that. Give us a call, Videoguys, 800-323-2325. We'd be more than happy to figure out which versions you're eligible for, what you want to get, how you want to do it. We're there for you. I want to transition now a little bit because there's Media Composer, but there's also some Avid hardware. So anytime we do an Avid show, we want to talk about that stuff a little bit. We want to talk about that there are 3 Avid I/O Artist I/O options. There's Artist DNX ID $9.99. The problem that product had, it was Thunderbolt 3 only, which was a big issue when it was introduced, but we're finding more and more Thunderbolt 3 ready computers and laptops, so that makes that a really sexy little option. The DNX IQ is the big kahuna at $38.99. It's got the most I/O. It also has Thunderbolt 3 or a PCIe board, so you can use that if you've got a old Mac cheese grater or an off-the-shelf PC that does not have Thunderbolt 3. And then also there's the Avid Artist DNX IV, which at $29.99, $3,000 is Thunderbolt 3. All 3 good options. If you're trying to figure out which one to get, give us a call. We'll help go over that with you. And then I want to stress that Avid NEXIS Pro, if you're going to get into shared storage and collaboration and you're going to edit with Avid, there is no better solution on the planet than Avid NEXIS Pro. NEXIS Pro is affordable at $12,499. It's something that you can easily get into. It's affordable. It works great. and it supports more than just Avid, folks. It's called Avid. Nothing works with Avid better. If you're using Media Composer, there's nothing better with shared bids and collaboration. But NEXIS Pro works great with Premiere Pro, works great with Final Cut. For shared storage for video editing, even at $12,499, it's still the best value around, 40 terabytes. You can put 4 of them together. You need to have some kind of switch. We recommend the Dell switch, a 2024 switch starting at about $2,000. You know, we've got some bundles with the NEXIS Pro and the switch. You can stack up the 4 of them to get yourself up to 40, 60, 80, 160 terabytes of data. NEXIS Pro, it is so much easier to use and collaborate on the NEXIS Pro with the software that's running on it. So I'm going to put you on the spot, Mike. We didn't even tell you if it was going to be in the show, but it is. Tell us about NEXIS Pro and what you like about it and why you recommend it to people.
I mean, you just hit the nail right on the head. I mean, it's affordable. The project sharing that we have is great. When you start adding chassis, it doubles, triples, quadruples the bandwidth. And I mean, the price is great. So, I mean, whether you are using Premiere or Final Cut or Resolve or Media Composer, it's an amazing storage system.
And then Avid's also got Avid MediaCentral Editorial Management. That's something that, you know, it's not for everyone. You've got to be a shop who needs it to appreciate. But what I love about that product is now people on tablets and on lighter weight, thin client devices can be doing their job. Not everyone's an editor in a workflow, especially if you're doing something like reality or a cooking show. There's tons of footage. People have to go through it, pick the shots that are best, make notes and stuff like that. And this is a way where your assistant editors and other people don't have to be on a full-blown Media Composer with all the computer hardware needed to support it. And I think it's a really cool thing. I don't know that it's getting the traction Avid or I thought it would get, but I think it's a brilliant product. And I think it's just a little bit of ahead of its time, but it keeps getting better and better. And I know they just had another release with some more features on that. If you could talk briefly about MediaCentral Editorial.
Sure. I mean, it's really an amazing feature, and you have to see it to believe it, because basically I call it an Avid media player in a web browser.
Right.
Because with this server, I mean, you can access the same media that the editors are using in the edit bay. It creates a proxy of HTML5 on the fly when you're looking at it with a player. You can add markers. You can get a phonetic search option, just like phrase find built into this. But you can build shot lists. You can, basically prep stuff outside of Media Composer. So it's for the person who doesn't need all of the tools, but wants to be part of the process and collaborate. So the web browser is just fantastic. And again, you have to see it to believe it. And it keeps getting better. We just added a customized logger to the release, which is coming out at the end of this month.
Cool. Well, Mike, I want to thank you for coming on the show. I think we did a great job. We kept it under 30 minutes, which is a miracle, because when I have a guest on the show, we tend to talk too long. So you did a good job, which I appreciate. Once again, you can see Mike at many trade shows and events, demoing Avid on the big stage or doing individual teaching and stuff. Mike, thank you for coming on the show. I think it was a great show, and I think we let people know why they need to get back on the Avid bandwagon if they jumped off. It's time to jump back on Avid, get your Media Composer chops going, deliver the best possible videos you can.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, everyone.
Cool. And now we're going to go to what's coming up on the next show. On the next show, we've got, we're going to do NDI workflows with Panasonic NDI cameras, switches, and controllers. That's right. We're going to start selling Panasonic, their NDI PTZ cameras, as well as they have a handheld NDI camera, and they also got some cool joystick controllers and switchers and mixers. That's going to be our next show next week. Thank you for tuning in. We kept it under 30 minutes, which is no small deal for me when I get talking with people. This is Gary from Videoguys. Like us on YouTube, like us on Facebook, spread the social media love, tell everyone why we're so great, and we'll just appreciate it tremendously. So this is Gary from Videoguys. Peace.
Videoguys is available Monday through Friday. Give us a call at 1-800-323-2325. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Instagram to stay connected with all of our updates. And you can like us on Facebook. Keep an eye out for our live videos, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks for watching.